Well, good morning from the Scott Learning Center. Welcome to the first episode of the first season of Down the Road, our podcast from Baker Scott Learning Center in Scott, Mississippi. Glad to have you all this morning listening. We got a couple of guests here in the studio with me. This is our inaugural episode, and I'm your host, Jay Mahaffey. We're going to have a couple of goals of the podcast today. Number one is to share with you what we intend to do with this podcast. Number two, share a little bit about the Scott Learning Center and kind of the context of what we do here around Scott. But also, we want to share something we believe to be agronomically relevant in today's world, and fairly eminently relevant in today's world. We got agronomic things going on in the field. So I want to welcome our guests this morning. You guys introduce yourself and say hello to the world.
Sammy Sonnier, agronomist in the Northeast Louisiana. Thanks for having us, Jay, and look forward to this. And I think we can bring a lot of valuable information to the growers in the Southern Delta.
Well, we're glad to have you. And little known fact is I went to college with Sammy, so we go way back. If we get to drifting too bad, y'all drug us back in the road.
Unfortunately, we've known each other for 35 years. So,
man, and I thought I was the old one in here. But anyway, my name is John Hand. I'm a crop protection rep, and I cover the Red River Valley in South Louisiana. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to it.
Well, we're glad to have guests on site this morning. We're having another meeting, and that kind of leads into the purpose of the podcast and this entire effort that we're trying to establish. Many of y'all listening, and hopefully some that are listening have not been to Scott, know what we do, but I thought it was worthwhile to talk a little bit about what we do. The Learning Center itself started in Leland in 2007 or 2008. I took over in early 2009, and we've been able to grow and move to Scott, which is the ancestral home of Delta Pine, which will come back to be relevant in a few minutes, I hope. And we have about 400 acres here that we farm on behalf of farmers. And the folks from the field, like John and Sammy, they have suggestions of evaluations they want us to do. Growers call us all the time with different issues. We talk through that in a sort of a data, scientifically driven kind of way. That will be the entire basis, I hope, of this podcast, along with a little fun along the way. We want to make this somewhat entertaining, but very informative. And we're going to talk through data. We'll talk a little bit about products. We'll talk about reissues that are relevant to the broader world today as they occur, things like cotton PGRs. Today, we're probably going to talk about corn fungicides for most of the conversation. And the goal of this is to share information, but we welcome your input also. We really want to have something here that's interactive with a broader audience. It's not always easy to just travel to Scott. You know, we're all busy. We're out irrigating and spraying and doing whatever. This will be a mechanism we can use to disseminate information quickly to a broader audience. Now, the way this is going to be set up through this podcast, and we'll probably go into somewhat more details about this over time. Now, I really intend this, number one, to be informational. Number two, to have some almost segments, kind of like a news show. I'm thinking we'll have things like the corn corner and the soybean silo and the cotton patch. Those are the three crops that we primarily deal with at Scott. Any of you that know me know I'm a cotton person at heart and will remain one, but we all grow other crops too. And we're also going to have a segment I've preliminarily named Older Than Dirt.
We all fit into that one.
Yeah, we all getting there.
Some of us are seniors now.
The goal of that, and what I have found over the years, is we've got a real rich history here around Scott. You know, Delta Pine was founded here 100 and a few years ago. But the older I get, the more appreciation I have for the things we've been through technology-wise and how the agricultural world has changed and developed over time. And by that, I mean things like the history of the boll wheel. You know, my crew gets sick of hearing about the boll wheel. I wouldn't be what I am without it. But that influenced our pest management. It influenced the technology development and all the things that we deal with today. We'll talk about the history of Scott. We'll talk about the history of technology development. And who knows what else.
Jake, how many of your guys or the people that are on your staff have actually seen a boll weevil?
There's an interesting part of that. None. Well, maybe one.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's interesting to me is, I mean, we've got pests that we've eradicated like the boll weevil that some people that are in our industry now have never even seen one.
But, and with that being said, that's one of the things I tell people all the time for agronomists and people like Jay. Mother Nature's always going to ensure we got a job, because as soon as we control one pest, that secondary pest then becomes that primary pest. And you can look back on the last 30 years of the different pests that we have controlled, then something else steps up in its place, and it happens every time we do that.
Yeah, the old saying is nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah,
Right.
that's exactly right.
And John, you asked that question. You got to be careful talking about insects with me. You know that.
I know.
And that's going to be another good thing about this podcast. I think one of Jay's biggest attributes is he's an awesome storyteller. So I look forward to hearing some of the stories you're going to be telling on this podcast.
Well, I'll tell you one insect related today, because John brought it up. My crew went out, and they are an exceptional group of folks. We have the opportunity around here to train people about various biology and different crops they've not been exposed to, or, that kind of stuff. 2 or 3 years ago, they came running in my office with a moth in a coffee cup. And one of them said, "We found this cool moth in the field. Tell us what this is." And I opened the cup. It had 2 cups kind of nested together. I opened the cup, and guess what it was? Tobacco budworm. None of them had ever seen one.
Wow.
They got a talking to that day at noon, I promise you. They know more about fluorescence today than most folks. Anyway, we're going to get into all that kind of thing. I've been involved in the technology development before Bogart had a name, so be aware. That's going to be part of this tape. Anyway, that's kind of roughly where we're headed with this. So y'all tell me what you think the relevant issue is we should really broach today.
For me, the time of the year that we're in right now, most of our corn is pollinating or just getting through pollination. One thing, the majority of this corn, probably 50, 60% of it is going to be 6835 or 6839. One thing I want to make sure that our growers are aware of, those 2 hybrids are very susceptible to southern rust. Once we get through pollination, if we need to put a fungicide, I like to come in at brown silk. There's one, I'm going to back up a little bit on that. When this corn is pollinating here in the South, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, that usually going to last anywhere from about 6 to 9 days. The actual pollen shed, to where the pollen shedding off the tassel onto the silk. If you watch your tassel, when it first emerges at the top, you're going to see that top third shed pollen for about 2 to 2.5 days. Then you're going to see that middle third. Then you're going to see the bottom third of that tassel. And that's how that's going to progress down. The further north you go, that period's going to be a little bit longer because of temperatures. But for us, it's usually going to be somewhere between 6 and 7 days of actual pollen shed. And when that plant is shedding pollen, I don't want you to do anything. There's no reason. Let me back up on that. The only thing I want you to do is water it if it needs it. If it needs water, please make sure it water, because water is very heavily involved in pollination. From the turgid pressure within the plant is what allows the silks to come out. And plus that plant will actually produce more pollen if it's not under drought stress. But when that plant is actually pollinating, I don't want you to put a fungicide. I don't want you to put any kind of fertilizer on it. Leave it alone for those 7 to 10 days and let it do its. But there's no reason to take a chance on affecting pollination.
Yeah, that's the common guidance we give around the Learning Center. I know there are things that are safe you can do and you use in pollination period in corn, but if you really get out and mess that up, you got to wait again until next year to start over.
Yeah, whoever that individual was that come up with the tassel shot term 20, 30 years ago, I'd like to discuss that with them, because when it first tassels and you're first pollinating, let it be a corn plant for 10 days. Just water if it needs it and nothing else on that right there. But with that being said, once we get through pollination, let's get the brown silk. And then if we want to put a fungicide out, to me, that's the time we need to do it. If we have disease present before that, of course, we will apply that fungicide then. But if we don't have disease presence and we're doing it for plant health, late season standability, we got a lot of corn that we know we're going to have to harvest, and some of it's going to be 10, 11, 12% by the time we get to it. Put that fungicide on that last 25%, 30% of your crop to help with your standability and your plant health, to make sure that plant's still standing when you get there to harvest it. Not only the 6835 and 39, but the 6606, it's got a common parent. It's going to be susceptible to rust also. Some of the other diseases that we can control that they're a problem here in the southern U.S. We have a pretty good disease package with them, but the rust is the one thing we're really going to focus on with some of the decab hybrids.
Yeah, and I commonly get the comment or the question back from folks that are considering this decision. Do I do it all? And I think there's a deeper conversation to be had about that, because you think about the risk and the risk profile associated with disease. There are places that certainly influence the likelihood of you having significant or economic disease pressure in the field. And by that, I mean, consider things like replanting or planting date to start with. We had a big ice freeze event back in the spring. It caused a lot of replanting. Well, that corn is replanted is probably at higher risk of disease than corn that was not replanted. Disease, Sammy mentioned that earlier, 68. We know 68, 35, and 39 are, they're susceptible to some of these diseases. They probably need to be on the top of the list. And then I also kind of phase it looking at what's going on in the counties south of me, or parishes. I'm sorry, I use county, but parishes.
That's right.
I'm from Franklin Parish. I'll own up to that.
Washita myself.
That's right. What's happening south of me? Are they seeing a lot of disease tolerance? What's the weather pattern? All of those things kind of phase into this risk profile associated with whether or not I ought to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Jay. We think about, Sammy touched on timing, and timing's got to be right for us to do that. But the other things that I think about are, is it starting to show up in those areas that are south of us? Is the environmental conditions, or are the environmental conditions such that it could progress northwards towards where I'm farming? And so those are things that we've got to look at, because that's important for us to make a decision on the fungicide. And Sammy did a good job of mentioning, do a part of your crop, if it's that portion of your crop that you need a little better standability, then those are things that we need to focus on. So there's a lot that goes into it, whether, instead of just saying, well, I'm going to go out and treat everything. I mean, think about agronomically, is it the right time? Is it the right field to do it? This disease looks like it's coming in.
Yeah. What's my harvest capacity?
Right.
Right. And I'm going to really reiterate the Southern Rust with the 68, 35, 39 series. We had a field last year right on the Louisiana-Arkansas line. The farmer called me at Dent. Rust was coming in. I said, my whole career I've been taught we're at Dent, we'll outrun it. You're probably 20 days from black layer, 20 to 25 days roughly from black layer. I said, I believe we'll outrun it. And we kind of made a decision where we're going to treat half and not treat the other half. The half we treated was 12 bushels better than the half we didn't. So with these hybrids, if rust comes in, we're really going to push, y'all. And this is something we've talked about for the last 3 years since these hybrids have come out. They're very susceptible to southern rust. If it comes in, really going to encourage y'all to put a fungicide out. And with that, we do have a really good fungicide, Absolute Max. John, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Absolute Max is the product that we're recommending. And the reason we're doing that is because with the disease package that our varieties have on other things other than southern rust, that's the strong point for Absolute Max. That's where we've really seen it perform better than some of the other offerings that we may have, such as Delaro or Delaro Complete. Absolute Max is a better southern rust product. It's 2 modes of action. It's a strobilurin and it's a triazole. So it's a 2 mode of action product. So it'll give us preventative and curative activity as well. Okay. But what you don't want to do is if you're covered up with southern rust, it's going to help a little bit, but you got to be timely. As southern rust is approaching, you got to be proactive in that as well.
It's a decision process, not a decision.
That's right. And so, but for us, Absolute Max is a product that we're recommending because we feel agronomically it's going to have the best fit on some of the decap hybrids that are out there.
And I agree with that. And for the disease to be a problem, you have to have the disease triangle. You got to have the host, you got to have the pathogen, and you have to have the environment. And some years we don't have the environment. It's hot and dry, and disease is not going to be a problem. But in years like this year, what we're setting up right now over the last 2 weeks, we've got the environment, we've got the host, the pathogen, and the reports we get down along the Gulf Coast right now, and it can move up pretty quickly. And that's something that, and if we see it move up, we're going to let people know really quickly.
It also appears to me that we've got very high yield potentials. That's a part of this equation we need to consider too. I don't know how to do that exactly, but it appears to be set up to be a big corn year.
My area, the corn is kind of all over the board. We've got some that looks phenomenal. We got some that doesn't look quite as good, but overall, I think we're average or above average.
Well, I would say if you want more information about this, you'd like to discuss it. I mentioned when we started the podcast today, literally started today, all this is based in data. We've done evaluations of these things around Scott. I'll just take a few minutes at the end to talk about some of what we're doing, particularly in corn this year. This year and last year, practically every year, we evaluate a group of new corn hybrids for their agronomic fitness for buckshot, for sand. We've started doing a fairly large fungicide evaluation on various hybrids at different populations, looking at that. And that's something to consider. Standability in some of these higher population fields might not be quite as high as it may need some help. And fungicides are one of those tools we can use to do some of that. We've also got, and this is something I want to kind of leave the audience with today at some point, is a lot of our work is directed not by anybody's mistake, but it's an attempt to answer questions that people have from the field, because we all, farming every year starts out to be a rifle shot. I'm going to make the perfect shot every time. And it finishes just blasting away whatever's there, because we have bad things happen in the world. So we've got a bunch of stuff this year about fertility choices, about replanting decisions, about populations, and we've also got a very exciting new set of DeKalb hybrids that we put in all those, or a lot of those trials. So if you want more data about this, or you want to see the data.
Yeah, and one of the cool things, every year I seem to have a problem. I called Jay pretty early, and last year the skip row in corn, he did that. This year we had the freeze. Well, we replanted some, and where we replanted, we killed some of that, and there were some places we didn't do a very good job of killing. So what does a 50,000 population look like in some of this? So Jay was able to replicate some of that this year at Scott, and we'll have some of that data, and that's pretty cool. And another thing that, we talked about before the podcast started was we'd love to have y'all's input. If y'all have questions or concerns, send Jay a note, send myself a note. I'd get it to Jay or any of the other agronomists that you'd like to see, or topics you'd like to see Jay cover on these podcasts. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and I would say contact your local Bayer rep. There are lots of us prowling around out in the world. And if there's anything we can do to help, we'll be happy to try that. If you want to see the data, go to the Scott, just type generally the Scott Learning Center results page, and it'll come up a Bayer page with an address about a mile long. And the data of the last 7 or 8 years is all on there. And y'all welcome to look at it, criticize it, tell us what we did wrong, tell us how to do it different or better, and we'll be happy to try.
And I'll put another plug in there. I mean, I've heard Jay mention several times that some of the best ideas and some of the best information that's come out of the Learning Center has come from local agronomists, local farmers, or farmers that Jay deals with, and say, hey, I'm dealing with this. Have you ever looked at this? And Jay will go and implement it in the field just to find out, okay, is this something? What's it look like? How's it look? And so some of the best ideas are coming from people in the field, and so that's the purpose of the Learning Center.
I don't know that we've ever had one of those things that I thought one person had that problem.
Right.
My rule is if 2 people call me about it, it's probably going to wind up a plot.
Yep.
And some of the things we do look crazy, and they may be, but they end in answering questions. And we're going to go through some of that. Sammy mentioned the skip row corn from last year. That was planter malfunction simulation. What we learned was the corn, it compensates for not quite half of what a whole missing row would have made. Now, it does not make secondary ears. There's all kinds of things like that in the data, because there's debate about what does a secondary ear contribute. And our data is not very much. And it's those kinds of revelations that I don't know if they call them revelations. That may not be the right word, but
what it does, it allows us to go back and help that grower make the best economical decision. Based off of some data.
And it's based in data.
That's right. Not
emotion so much.
That's exactly right.
So with that, I think we'll wrap up today. I appreciate everybody listening. We appreciate your input. We appreciate your business. I want to invite everyone listening, anybody that might be interested in what's going on around Scott, call us, come by, schedule a visit. We'll be here. If you'd like more information about what we've talked about today, contact your local Bayer reps, or if you want to see our data from the Learning Center, you can look it up on the Bayer Scott Learning Center results page. It'll come up with the data from the last 7 or 8 years, and you feel free to look at it and call us about it, and we talk about the details and try to apply them to your situation. With that, I appreciate y'all listening to our first episode, and we'll see you down the road.